One of the most brilliant features of the Quranly app is that it tracks everything. The pages you read, the time you spent, the verses you read. And one of the most novel features, which I haven't seen anywhere, is this Hasanat counter. It keeps you motivated. It gives you a visual of the rewards that you're potentially receiving. So if you guys haven't already, definitely check out the Quranly app. The link is in the description box below. So I get many brothers and sisters asking me how to address atheists, what arguments they should present, what evidences they should bring. Now, I have a unique approach with atheists that I'm going to share with you in this video. But before I do this, I think it's important to mention and highlight that atheism, the type of Dawkinian atheism, is like a receding hairline. It's disappearing. You won't find many atheists like that openly proclaim, I'm an atheist, I'm a naturalist, I believe in science. That's dying down. However, that's not to say that there are still many people out there that don't believe in God, don't have a correct conception of God. There are many people out there that believe in just consciousness, that the universe is conscious, and such ideas. However, those are not the topic of today's video, and let's get down to breaking this down for you guys. So the very first thing I do when I speak to an atheist is I like to explore their worldview. I like to challenge their foundations. Because the reality is, guys, that atheism is an illusion. It's built upon a worldview which cannot maintain itself. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, let's think about it. Atheists claim that there is no God, there is no creator. Naturalists would go a step further, the naturalist atheists, and they would say that there is nothing beyond this physical, material universe. And even if there is, it's either material in and of itself or it has nothing to do with this physical closed system. Essentially, it's all matter in motion. And it's random, by the way. There is no meaning behind it. There is no consciousness. There's no intent behind it. Therefore, what this means is that everything that exists, the entire universe, every single human being that's ever lived, is just one big cosmic accident. There is no cause, no purpose, no meaning behind any of this. Now, that has some severe implications. Well, what does that mean? That means there is no ultimate meaning. That means there is no ultimate purpose. That also means that we now have a problem. We have a problem of explaining our rational faculties, our truth-bearing rational faculties. If we are just an accident, just a random arrangement of atoms and molecules, and that too applies to our minds, or our brains as they refer to them, well then, how do we explain our truth-bearing faculties? The fact that we can reason to the truth. Not that we always get things right, but we have that potential to get to the truth. We have those cognitive mechanisms that are in place that allow us to appreciate and understand truth. And truth obviously is good, and therefore there is a moral dimension to truth too. That's another problem for atheism, which is that they cannot ground objective moral values and duties. Now, it's not that they haven't tried philosophically to do this, but whenever you explore those philosophical avenues and how they've tried to justify morality, or how they've tried to provide an account for our truth-bearing rational faculties, you very quickly realize that these are extremely weak arguments and points that literally crumble as soon as you stare at them. Like literally, you look at them, and what I mean stare at them is when you focus in on them and you read up on them, you realize, well, these are really shoddy and they're really flawed. Remember, it's all random. It's all random. If there is no meaning behind our existence, then how do we inject meaning into morality or morals and ethics? How does this affect our conversation with an atheist? Well, think about this. When an atheist approaches you and he's facing you and you're face to face and you're having a discussion, and we proceed to provide logical arguments for God's existence, well then you and the atheist are both assuming something. You're assuming, number one, or a couple of things. Number one, that the atheist is justified in asking for evidence and proof for God's existence. And that's a question in and of itself, because from an Islamic perspective, we believe that the belief in God is innate. It's axiomatic. We begin with it. And we also acknowledge that without God, you really can't make sense of anything. And this brings me on to the second assumption, which is, well, we're assuming that the atheist is standing on a worldview which allows him to account for his rational faculties, meaning that he has the ability to process and understand and respond to what you're saying. Now, sure, they can do this, but the point here is that their worldview does not account for those abilities that they display. And there are many other underlying assumptions there, but hopefully these 2 points specifically highlight that, well, at the very least, before we provide arguments for God's existence to atheists, we should at the very least challenge their worldview. Are they even in a position to ask you for proof for God's existence? And doing this will also highlight the flaws of the atheist worldview, that their fundamental beliefs which formulate their worldview strip them from being able to account for pretty much anything, whether that's rationality, morality, making sense of the ordered universe that we live in, and so on. So essentially, don't let them get away with these things, right? We have to highlight that, look, when you are maintaining or adopting atheism, you're intellectually ruining yourself, essentially, right? Look, Kierkegaard, he mentioned something very interesting when speaking about life. He categorized life into 3 types or 3 ways you can live. There was the aesthetic life, there was the ethical life, and then there was the religious life, right? And he said that for a human being to truly live a meaningful life, they have to climb this ladder, go from the aesthetic life, which is the baseline, which is basically living according to your desires, and starting to live an ethical life, which would mean sacrificing things and doing what's right, etc., and then eventually making it up to the religious life. However, one thing he highlights, which is very powerful, and I believe true, is that you cannot live a truly ethical life or aspire to live a truly ethical life and maintain that in the absence of God. The reasons are evident, because for you to objectively ground an ethical life, you need God to ground objective moral values and duties. To be motivated to live an ethical life, you need something that transcends you, that you're accountable to. And thirdly, he also mentions that the reason most people fall into despair is because there is a gap. There is a distance between the way we perceive ourselves today and what we want to become in the future from an ethical perspective. And there is always a gap between us now and the ideal self. And because bridging that gap is a lifelong journey, it's something that we always are striving towards and we never really achieve. In the absence of God, you cannot overcome that despair when you think about this. The only way you can overcome this is through God. And if you look at this from an Islamic perspective, it's powerful, because when we make mistakes, we turn back to God and we seek His forgiveness. When we feel weak, we know that God is there, Allah is there, and He gives us strength. And He is in control of everything. And He is the most forgiving, the most merciful, etc. So this helps us overcome that despair that we feel when we look at the distance between us now and what we would like to be. So point being that when you remove God from the picture and look at the reality of an ethical life, something everyone is aspiring towards, even Jordan Peterson, one of the things that he's continuously pushing is, or he's trying to do is elevate people from this aesthetic way of living, this sort of live by your desires mode of life, to the ethical life, right? And sure, this may work for a while, but it's not going to be long lasting because it's not grounded in anything. And we need to highlight this to the atheists, that look, you're upon a worldview where sure, you may come up with certain ideas, philosophical constructs, which may allow you to ground in a way, or make you think that you're grounding your ethics and morals and everything else for that matter. But in the grand scheme of things, those are going to fall away because there's nothing that anchors you on atheism. So in summary, I guess what I'm saying, and just to summarize everything, is that when you are addressing atheists, when you're dealing with atheists and they ask for proof for God's existence, the first thing you should do, at least sometimes if you can try this, is just challenge their foundations. Well, are you even in a position to inquire about God or ask proofs for God's existence? Sure, you may have the faculties to do that, but does your worldview account for the abilities that you're displaying right now in front of me? and see how that works for you. And I've noticed from experience, whenever I've done this with atheists, in many cases, it's got them to think about the atheism and reconsider it, because they realize it's a position which, again, it just takes away from everything they are. They can't account for their own beings via atheism. So try this out. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I think this is a very powerful approach to take with atheists, and it puts you in the driving seat, because no longer are you on the back foot trying to answer questions and provide evidence. You're actually highlighting to them that, hold on, you're not in the seat of the judge, right? You're nowhere in the courtroom, so let's get you there first and then move on. Hopefully that was beneficial, and I'll speak to you guys next time. Assalamu alaikum.